Welcome back, everybody. Today we finally get the motor in the Mustang. Well, sort of. Just watch the thing. We're headed on a road trip. We're headed down to pick up a new tail shaft housing to convert the transmission from 4-wheel drive to 2-wheel drive. It's about 2 hours away, but let's get to it. I am back at the shop. We were successful. We got our tail right here. And if you don't know what a transmission tail is, basically it goes on the back of the transmission. This is the adapter for the transfer case, which makes a 4-wheel drive, which sends the drive shaft up. And we're gonna go ahead and put this in place of this adapter right here. I went ahead and tried to get the engine and the transmission in the car, but due to my engine lift, I actually was not able to. So what I'm gonna have to do is go ahead and drop the subframe from the car body, squeeze the engine and transmission in there, and go ahead and rebolt the subframe back to the car. Let's get to it. And just like that, we've got the motor in the car. Now there are some clearance issues, but they're actually kind of small. There's one on the subframe on the right side where the oil pan is, and the other one is the transmission tunnel. The top of it is hitting the transmission, but I think once we clearance the front subframe, I can drop this engine down and that actually won't be an issue. So I have to build some custom offset mounts, but I think it's doable. Now that I know how I need to modify the subframe, I need to go ahead and get everything off of it so I can drop it out and get it out so I can cut it and weld it. So I had to go ahead and notch out the K member in the front. That way the oil pan can clear.
and I went ahead and just hit it, welded it back together with my super cheap welder. Might have to modify this some more, but this should be a good start.
All right, guys, it's the next day here. I went ahead and threw the cross member back in the car, tested the engine and transmission off camera, and I discovered a whole new issue when trying to mount the stock manifolds. So the biggest issue we're dealing with right now is the exhaust manifold, which is on the side of the motor right here, actually makes contact with the mount, but also the manifold is hitting back here. It's got a pretty big catalytic converter. You can kind of see it down there. That portion is hitting here, and my plan here, in order to drop the engine down to create clearance off the body, is I'm going to put a 1-inch spacer. And how I'm going to do that actually is this 1 by 2 inch tube I got here that I'm going to cut and weld just like that, so we can maintain this gap, which will lower the entire engine and hopefully give us clearance on the body. It's the next day here. I've got some great weather outside, so I'm gonna roll the car outside so we can start welding up the front subframe and the spacer pieces we had to put in there. The only problem is I have the entire front end torn apart. I don't want to put it back together, so I'm gonna put it on some skates and just push it outside. As you can see, I just lifted up the car and I lowered the subframe onto a 4x4 and some dollies. Now that I got the car outside, I can go ahead and take off the subframe so we can start welding up that metal. Next step is going to be to go ahead and weld this tube to the frame of the car. In order to do that, we have two separate products. The self-etching primer is for bare metal. You want to make sure you do this or else this thing will rust if water gets in there. And also, this is a high zinc weld through primer that you actually spray on the metal and the parts you're going to be welding, and then you can weld right through it, and that protects it in the future from corrosion. So these two things combined will help keep this piece and the car body from rusting out. Next up, we need to go ahead and mount the subframe back into the car so we can put the spacers in place and go ahead and start welding them. That's gonna do it for today's video. I'm starting to lose daylight outside and it's way too cold to paint, so I'm gonna go ahead and roll the car inside and call it a day. On my next video, I'll go ahead and finish welding and painting those spacers and finally build some engine mounts to get the engine mounted in the car for good. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for future content.